Hi, this is Suan from IEN Consultant. This is Yamona. And today a little bit exciting because we are going to Kebun-Kebun Bangsar to record our podcast number 3, which is in conjunction with COP26, Conference on Climate Change. And what's really interesting is I saw a picture and it says that this technology can solve climate change. And well, I don't believe in silver bullet, but man, this picture just captured my attention. And this technology is not new, it's not an innovative technology, but rather is a very interesting technology, and I'm going to show you what it means by that. There you go.
If Vivian is very scared or not.
So Vivian, how was it feel?
I think it's perfect. I think it's like a beautiful form of roller coaster. Like you don't need to go and pay for one, just sit on Gregor's bike.
So this bike is actually electric motor. So it assists the pedal.
That's right.
So does it make it cycling easier?
Definitely, especially when you have valuable cargo like Vivian and you go uphill. It's good with a little extra push.
Okay.
Okay, let's go.
Perfect.
Right. Jump.
Go.
So we are heading to Kebun-Kebun Bangsar. It's actually one of the project done by Vivian, the precious cargo. So this was a land by Tenaga Nasional Berhad, the energy utilities provider in Malaysia. So because this land was kind of wasted and it doesn't use for any purpose, so they come up with a community project that revamp the whole land into a kebun or garden. So if you're interested in visiting that kebun, it's located at Bangsar. It is at Lorong Bukit Pantai, which is opposite of Pantai Hospital. So it's on the way to Bangsar village. You will see one garden on the left hand side. I will show you. This is the way. So you can actually pretty see some of the visitor over here, and it's public. Anyone can just come in and have a look at the garden.
Wait. Yamona, come on. Don't let it out, don't let it out.
Vivian. She is one of the mastermind behind all these Kebun-Kebun Bangsar. You want to share a bit on how this project gets started? Just a quick introduction.
This project started in 2016. A bunch of us in Bangsar, we sort of brainstormed together like, okay, this is something that we want to create. And now 2021 and here we are. Doesn't it look beautiful?
Indeed. Thanks Vivian.
Yeah, it's actually raining right now as we are recording this podcast, but because of the dense tree above us, we actually can't feel any. We're not yet feeling any heavy rainfall, but there's a thunderstorm and we're just stuck underneath this huge tree canopy. And then there's the roosting and all this going animals agree. And mind you, this is in Bangsar, the heart of Bangsar, so that's quite cool. Okay, so this is our third installment of the podcast series that's in conjunction with COP26, and the idea of this series of episodes is to discuss, different things from our nationally determined contributions to different topics. And today we're bringing something a bit closer to home for us, which is the built environment and low carbon developments and things like that. So you've heard us on audio, on podcast, so now you can see who's who. Over here we have Regina, and then that's Gregorys from Denmark, the Denmark representative. And in our podcast, Yamona was carrying the Malaysian perspective. So today we're just going to have a conversation. We're going to talk about green buildings, we're going to talk about green townships, low development, low carbon societies, and so let's get this started. First and foremost, green buildings, that's what we all do. We specialize in green buildings. So how do you all think green buildings is actually going to help tackle the climate change crisis that we're having? Any opinions? Let's go!
It's the key. Yeah, well, I think maybe I can go first. But I mean, the building sector accounts for, I think, about 40% of the CO2 emissions. But even more than that, a bit like what Winston Churchill said, that we shape buildings and then they shape us. So not just how we build the buildings, but also how we construct our neighborhoods and city planning. So for example, I mean in KL, most people have to drive to work because the city is simply not constructed for, let's say, cycling like we did to get here, or some of us did, Vivian. So therefore it's not just about buildings, but also, I would say, city planning. And for example, having gardens like Kebun-Kebun Bangsar in the city plan, where you can actually then have this wonderful natural environment, and you don't have to go for some holiday and a fly to some little tropical island. Your tropical island is actually in the neighborhood. So that will lead, of course, to a much more low carbon lifestyle and give more life quality.
And you're a cycling celebrity. Gregorys is a cycling celebrity. Check out his YouTube page. But yeah, can you tell us a bit about your cycling journey too, and how that began when you came to Malaysia a visit?
Okay. Well, I'm from Copenhagen, so that's one of the cycling capitals of the world, and I was actually a bit sad when I moved to Malaysia. I mean, I was excited about it, but I was very sad when I realized I have to get a car here. I mean, you can't cycle around. Actually, I didn't even consider cycling for the first few years because traffic was crazy, it was super hot, and there was no cycling infrastructure. And also, yeah, you drive on the other side of the road from what I'm used to. So, but then after a few years, I warmed up to the idea. I bought the Proton mountain bike, which many people don't know about. I think it was discontinued. It's actually, I was told, a collector's item now. And then I started realizing it is possible to cycle in KL, but you just have to select the roads carefully. So you have to go on roads that very carefully, roads that have, I I mean, I normally say not faster than 50 kilometers an hour traffic, and then so you don't get hit from behind from some fast car. And then the biggest challenge or risk is actually the road itself. I mean, you really have to look out for potholes, grills. Often these grills run parallel to the road, so your tire might go inside. And then, of course, you have to feel comfortable on a bicycle. So you can sort of, a bit like motorbikes do it, right? You can go between cars. But I definitely found out, I mean, I'm quite comfortable on a bicycle, so bicycling is feasible, but I wouldn't blanket recommend it to most Malaysians, because a lot of Malaysians are not so comfortable on a bicycle. So it's always safety first.
Do you think it's grown over the years that you've been here, like cycling as a means of commuting rather than recreation? Because I know a lot of people cycle for recreation.
Yeah.
A lot. and it's just growing more and more. But commuting though, I don't see so much of that.
Yeah. I mean, it has grown, but it's still very little, right? So for example, when the first bicycling route in Kuala Lumpur opened, going from Merdeka Square up to Mid Valley, and that happens to be, I can ride part of that as part of my commute to the office, but I never met anyone, you know. I mean, maybe once or twice I met like a motorbike, but never any cyclist. And if you met another commuter, I mean, you really sort of would wave to this person, and I even made friends with one, and we were going in the same direction, and struck up a conversation, and because we were sort of the few who lived to tell about commuting by bicycle, right? And I mean, that's such a contrast from Copenhagen, where more than 50% of the population commutes by bicycle, where you don't have time to wave to everyone. But yeah, I mean, I see more people cycling now, and definitely spurred on by COVID as well. So my hope is that now that people have actually invested in these bicycles, obviously they like to bicycle, and they love to do it in their free time. It always starts with recreation. But they will ask themselves, why, since I love bicycling so much, why can't I do it in my commute? And so my hope is there will be some groundswell demand for better cycling infrastructure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think going back to, I mean, like we were talking about built environment, and maybe people don't see how big an impact transportation has on overall carbon emissions, and how the built environment or the buildings that we live in actually affect the decisions that we make in terms of transportation as well. I mean, there's obviously going to be more of an urban sprawl. With, you know, the cost of living in the city is being so high, people are moving further. Yamona, you live. Tell us about your daily transportation to work.
Yeah, so I live in Shah Alam, and I drive every day from Shah Alam to Kuala Lumpur, and the traffic is horrible. It is really bad. You see, the reason why I got a car and not use a public transportation is mainly the accessibility. So you see, the reason, I think one of the reasons and the problems or the challenges that we're currently still facing is that, you know, the accessibility and the efficiency of the public transportation is not still as good enough for people to conveniently travel, you know. And even if, let's say, you know, there are countries where they, you know, they have separate lanes for buses and taxis to go, so that, you know, it'd be convenient. That's the point of public transportation, right? But we don't see that here in the city, right? So given the opportunity and improved infrastructure for it, you wouldn't mind taking the train rather than driving and being stuck in the traffic, right? Okay, great. And I think, like, I don't know, as Biophilia consultants, I think we also try to make as much influence as possible in the buildings, you know. But there's only so much that can be done when you know, the building, you know, they've already selected a certain site. But I think the best they can do is maybe we try to have a good network towards like existing public transportation nodes and things like that. So
but also providing the facilities, right, in the buildings, that's where it can come in.
Like
having a shower, like proper storage for the bicycle. So people who actually want to cycle, they have a place to park their bikes, and also a place to change and shower before they go to work. So I think that's where buildings can actually come in as well.
So that's on transportation in the built environment, but green buildings in general, I mean, we look at other things as well. We look at energy efficiency, indoor environmental quality. Let's talk about indoor environmental quality for a bit, you know, and how do you think that has any tie into the bigger picture of, you know, how people's perception or people's behavior or choices that they make, things like that, how does that impact the built environment and our...
Yeah, I mean, you mean the indoor environment? Yeah, I think there's a growing understanding that it's not just about having the temperature setting right. It's sort of, I mean, the human body has a lot of, I mean, we have eyes, we smell things, I mean, you can almost like feel if it's a nice space to be in. So getting, I mean, making buildings that are healthy is very important actually. And the big, as green building consultant, I always say, okay, we can save your energy bill, and there's a good payback time on that. But actually, the biggest benefits is when we build a building that is conducive for human occupancy, and where people, the building sort of stimulates people. So you get some daylight, you have some view out, you get fresh air, and that means you are just much more healthy. You're more productive at work. You're less sick. So that's the main benefits to green buildings, I would say.
But I think, but I think we should also maybe look at building in a different perspective, right? It can just be like a living organism, right? It's not just a place where you work, but you can also bring nature back to the building, to the urbanized area where like the building itself can be a source of generating food, like urban farming, we're also talking about that. Being energy efficient, but at the same time producing energy, right, for the people who are actually living and working in it. And I mean, basically bring back some biodiversity as well. So I think it can be a very holistic picture, and I'm sure Gregorys will want to talk about his goals.
Exactly.
Tell us about the goats.
Well, perfect segue. Yeah, no, but I think this contact with nature is I mean, which is called biophilia. There's a realization that this is very important, and I think, I mean, whenever you see an architect present his building, you will have a blue sky, and then there'll be like 3 birds or something like that on the sky, right? But in reality, how do you bring nature to your building, right? So of course, good landscaping, and you might have some butterflies and so on. But what I have proposed a few times is a little bit like the concept we have here, where we have animals walking around. So instead of having a gardener who comes and does all the gardening on all the different terraces of the building, why not build the building so this can be done by nature itself? For example, by introducing a goat that can climb around and basically prune the landscape, but also fertilize the landscape, right? Because it's sort of if you go to Ireland or other places like that, you will see the grass is so green and nicely pruned by all these sheep or whatever. And that's because they prune that grass, but they also fertilize it. So why can we not have that on the buildings? And it's actually very fun as well to watch goats, because they're very good climbers. So you could sort of look for where is the goat today, you know? and is it really able to climb up that ledge or jump over there, you know? So I think it's a very fun idea, but so far, I think it's almost 10 years now, I haven't been able to convince anyone to do this.
Still trying, this mission is going strong.
So now, okay, let me try again. I appeal, please steal the good idea.
Yeah, and we not so long ago did an article on breaking the barriers between indoor and outdoor, because I think a lot of people coming out of the pandemic as well, they really want to have this connection. And a good example of that, of biophilia, like you mentioned, Gregorys, is our project Pyramid, where I think that's a perfect example of biophilia properly integrated with the building. I think for the occupants, they've also, you know, that there's been a survey, right? And
yeah, it was a factory in Penang, and the former factory was like a typical factory, so very few windows, everything was artificially lit, and we worked with a very good architect here in Malaysia, design units, and the concept was basically that every space in this factory should have views out to greenery, daylight, and he basically named this factory the factory in the forest. So it was in one of these industrial parks where there's just it's quite a soulless place. I mean, it's just all of these flat green fields, not much nature at all. And this factory is so lush. I mean, now 3-4 years after its started operation, when you park your car, it's almost like lost in the forest, right? Because it's so bushy and it's so nice, and the staff really loves it. We did a anonymous survey where we asked them what they liked about the building, and a third of them said this contact with nature was what they really liked, and the natural environment, and the conducive work environment. And we also asked, do you like your prefer the old factory or the new factory? The old factory was on the island, this one is on the mainland, and 90% said they prefer the new factory. So very good feedback.
Yeah. So let's talk about a low carbon society, a low carbon development. What is your vision, or what do you perceive a low carbon development to be in your own words?
Do you know the stuff?
Yeah.
Or Yamona?
Vivian. Vivian of Kebun-Kebun Bangsar.
What low carbon
what is your vision of a low carbon city or a low carbon development?
My vision, actually, it's quite similar to what Singapore is doing, where essentially your big monsoon drains turn into rivers, your drains become streams, your drains become you know, really like small creeks in that sense. You bring back nature back into an environment, and you're engineering it back into the environment, right? And in a sense, when you look at buildings, and when you are trying to bring in another level of greenery as well, like covering the facade or the top of the building with greenery, that at the same time which is also harvesting water. Essentially, the whole topography landscape becomes a sponge to bring in water as well, but at the same time you're insulating the building. So I would see it that way. And when you bring in more and more greenery into public spaces and also all these spaces, right, what happens is you are bringing people out as well. You're allowing people to come out as well, to walk, to enjoy the space. You know, the only space that we actually truly enjoy right now is actually indoors. Isn't that sad, right? So I would say that would be my vision of what a low carbon city would look like from an architectural point of view. So yeah.
Yamona.
Wow.
What is your vision?
Suddenly stuck already. I think my vision for a low carbon city would be a city that is efficient, that is accessible, that is sustainable. You know, wow, elaborate on each one of it. Yeah, so when we speak about low carbon city or low carbon development, I feel like it should be very efficient in terms that it reduces carbon footprint significantly, and everything that is used to build is sourced sustainably, and yeah, pretty much that. And also there has been a lot of talks on circular economy going around since the 12 Malaysian plan, and I hope that, you know, it won't be just a plan, and we will actually be incorporating them into actions. Yeah.
Regina?
So I think my vision of a low carbon development is think probably very idealistic, quite similar to what Yamona and Vivian mentioned. So I hope that we can live in a sustainable manner, meaning that we have very energy efficient buildings. And it's still my dream to one day be able to build one building that is zero, zero carbon, zero waste, and zero water. So hopefully in my lifetime I will be able to be part of a project like this, but also to basically live with nature, live beside nature as well. Because we live in a very urbanized area, so it will be really nice to have, be able to grow your own food, and to have biodiversity coming to you as well, and to see a lot of nature. But of course at the same time to have a good indoor environment, right? Because ultimately we spend so much time working and living in indoor spaces as well. So that's my dream. And I think we also talk about infrastructure, where we need to have accessibility to low carbon transport like public transport, the train and cycling infrastructure. So I think that will be my ideal low carbon development.
Yep, I think so. I can maybe add to that. I think the problem, the problem or the challenge with cities in Malaysia is that you have urban heat island effect. There's so much concrete, and living without aircon is not really possible, at least not in the daytime.
In the tropics.
Yeah, in the tropics, in a country, in a city like Kuala Lumpur. But once you introduce greenery on a big scale, you can actually, it's actually a very cool place. Actually, I had the amazing experience of hiking here in Malaysia, and I felt cold. I mean, really cold for the first time without the forest. So once you have all this greenery, you don't need the aircon, you need a fleece jacket, and I wish I had two of them. So, and I think Sheila, where you live, you have pretty good thermal environment, right?
I'm very lucky in that sense, because I think I live in an apartment with a very good airflow.
Right.
And it's an older apartment from the 60s. And it was designed in such a way, that it has very good cross ventilation, and we're always having good airflow. Sometimes I'm even with a hoodie in the apartment because the airflow is really good. So I'm very lucky in that sense. I've almost never, I've lived there for 4 years, I can count with two hands the number of times I've actually turned on the AC. And I think a lot of newer buildings are not designed with that in mind. It's designed with air conditioning in mind, naturally. So a lot of glazing, not good quality glazing, and things like that. So that it's sad, because it's sad when I hear friends got a new apartment, and then they got a new apartment with this built in with so many air conditioning units. So that's the first thing that comes to their mind is, yes, I have all these air conditioning units. So you don't even think that I'm going to have natural ventilation. And then the saddest part to me is I have a new apartment with a dryer. And I just can't for the life of me brain why we would need a dryer in Malaysia.
Very common now.
Because I mean, all you need is a small balcony space to hang your clothes up. But there's so many, comments about that. You don't want to have a balcony space because you don't want the facade of the building to have hanging clothes. I'm sure there are ways that they can design to incorporate that, because we've got so much heat, we've got such good winds to dry your clothes out naturally, that you don't a dryer.
That's one thing I like about the Singapore HDB flat, because they actually provide the facilities now for you to hang your clothes. And in the past you just lift out your bamboo stick outside your house, and that's what's happening in my parents' place. But in the newer one, because they take into consideration maybe some older people may not have the strength, so they have this a metal thing where you can just retract it automatically for you, so you don't even need to carry the heavy bamboo stick out.
Wow.
So I think that's quite cool.
It's really cool how we can actually learn from. I mean, buildings in the past were designed for our climate. I mean, the older buildings, they were designed for our climate to accommodate everything that we have. And I think like the HDB flats, we can learn so much from that, right? We can learn to innovate from those designs to provide good ventilation and things like that. So that's all for. Thank you so much for sharing your visions on a low carbon society, low carbon developments, and I think that's a wrap for this episode, and we will be back with our next episode tomorrow. The COP26, they will be wrapping things up over there, and we really hope for a good outcome. We really hope for some of our visions to come true in the next couple of years, hopefully, and we'll see you in our next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.